Hello. I'd like to speak today about what to do when you're concerned that your client's dozing off during your hypnotherapy session. And that is a real concern because we don't want them dozing off and missing it. We want them to be right there with us in the session, doing the work at an unconscious level to create the change that they've come to you for. So the problem is that we don't always know what's going on behind those closed eyes. So I'd just like to go through a few things that you can keep in mind and perhaps will be useful for you if this is happening to you. Now, the first thing is to ensure during the pre-talk that the client understands their role in the session. And I recently had somebody come and see me and he said he'd had hypnotherapy before and it didn't work. And when I asked him a little bit more about it, he was kind of like, well, I don't know. I did everything I was supposed to do. I relaxed back into that chair. He said, I was so relaxed, I dozed right off to sleep. And then I woke up and I went home and nothing had changed. So he clearly didn't understand his role in the session. So that's the first thing. Explain to the client that we don't want them dozing off to sleep, that we'll relax their body or we will take them through a process of relaxing the body, relaxing the mind. And in that state, in that nice relaxed state, that's where the change occurs. That's when the therapy happens. And I'll sometimes just draw a diagram like this to explain to them the brainwave states during an EEG, that when we're awake, our brainwaves are very alert. When we're asleep, they're very sedate. And in between, there's, two varying identified levels of relaxation of the brainwaves. And it's in here where hypnotherapy occurs, where meditation, guided visualization, guided relaxation, some yoga breathing practices, all of these trance state type things occur, and even naturally occurring trances like when you lose yourself in a good book or just relax and daydream a bit, or zone out in a movie, computer games, anything that takes you into that kind of relaxed trance state. It's a focused state and it's a relaxed state. And I explain to them that we don't want them going down here and drifting off to sleep or they'll miss the session. So it's a good thing to really make sure that the client understands their role in the session. Now, if you have a client who you think has dozed off to sleep on you before, or you think you're losing them, you think they're dozing off, then just do a light induction. You don't need to do a big heavy induction and you don't need to do a deepener. We don't need the client to be in this deep, deep state to get the outcomes. In the general run of things, I do like to take my clients down into a nice, deep kind of trance state. Not too deep, but nice and deep, just where they feel like something's occurred. It's a lovely feeling. It's a gentle feeling. It's peaceful. If clients suffer anxiety and things like that, it might be the most relaxed they've been ever in their life maybe. So it is nice to take clients into that nice deep trance state. But again, if they've fallen asleep on you before or if you think that they're dozing off, keep it light. Just do a nice light induction, no deepener, and then tap into their imagination. As soon as you tap into the power of the imagination, they're in trance. And I might do it something like this. We're all born with different abilities and talents, and some of us are better at some things than others. But one thing we're all born with is a powerful imagination. And right now, I'd like you to tap into the power of your imagination and just imagine there's a bright shining light in the distance or whatever it is that you want them to imagine. And as soon as they're in their imagination, they're in trance. Now, another tip, another good idea is to use their name during the session. There's a few benefits to that. One thing, it makes the hypnosis more conversational. It feels good, it keeps rapport with the unconscious mind, and it flows nicely. But one of the other things is that it keeps them with you. You know, even out of trance, when someone uses your name, it brings your focus back to them. So in trance, well, I guess most of us walk around in trance half the time anyway, but in trance, in a hypnotherapy session, just use their name naturally in the flow of the session. And you are now a non-smoker because that's what you want for yourself, Steve. And it just flows nice, and it just keeps bringing their attention back to you, keeps nice rapport with the unconscious mind. Now, the other thing is, never be afraid to ask for feedback. Whether it's an ideomotor signal like raising the finger, taking a deep breath, nodding a head, even speaking. Feedback is something that will not bring the client out of trance. It won't do anything to lessen the impact, and it can very often improve the outcome, improve the impact, because it lets us know what's going on. So, and again, you would use it just in the normal flow of your session. So it might be like, if you're concerned that they're going off a bit too deep, you might say something like, and you are now a non-smoker because that's what you've chosen for yourself, isn't it, Steve? Just raise this finger, and you wait for the finger to raise, or nod your head, and you wait for the nod. And watch closely, because it might be just the tiniest little movement or movement of the finger. So it might be a tiny little signal that you're getting, but it's still a signal. They're still with you. Because sometimes people can go into a real deep trance, a real, such a relaxed state that they just don't want to respond. So it'll just be a tiny little response, or maybe no response at all. And I think that if they're not responding, you need to push for a response. They may only just be in a deep trance and so relaxed that they just don't want to raise that finger. But if they're not responding to that, if they're not following that instruction, then they may not be responding to anything else you're saying either. So I think you need to push for a response. And it might be a deep breath. It might be like, and now as you just feel those changes occurring, and you know that some deep internal changes are happening, take a deep breath and lock that in, Steve. And again, using their name, watching their breathing. You don't want to say take a deep breath just as they're about to breathe out, because that just that does confuse things. So just watching with the flow of their breathing, taking the deep breath in, and they'll, you're leading and pacing, and you're getting the response, and then they're still with you. Again, if there's no response, they may not be with you. They may not be responding to anything else. And of course, the other thing is you can talk to the client, and you can get them to talk to you. That will not bring them out of trance, and it will maybe give you information that can improve the session. I recently was doing a session with somebody, and we're moving into the future, and I asked him, there was a line, step over the line, and when you've stepped over the line, nod your head, Steve. And there was no nod. And I waited and waited. And so eventually I just said, tell me what's happening, Steve. And he said, I can't step over the line. I'm being dragged back. I'm being pulled back away from the line, and I can't do it. So then I knew what was going on. If I hadn't asked the question, I would have had no idea, and I could have kept going on with that session in a totally inappropriate direction, but it gave me the information that I needed. So what to do if you're concerned that your client has dozed off and if they're not giving you the feedback? Well, what I do is I will always bring them up a little bit lighter. So, and I might do that by tapping the finger and saying something like, now, I just want you to drift back to the sound of my voice. And when you're focused on the sound of my voice, just raise this finger, Steve. And I'll also just increase the volume of my voice a little bit as I do this. Because again, just to tap back in, using their name, using touch, using volume, to just bring them back to your voice. Now, if I'm not getting a response, then I might say something like, I'm now going to count up from 1 to 5, and with each number, you'll just drift back a little bit higher, back to the sound of my voice. And when you're focused back on the sound of my voice, just raise this finger. And then it might be like 1, just drifting back to the sound of my voice, and raise this finger, Steve, and so on. And I'll keep going till I get a response. And as soon as I get a response, it'll be like, now, I just want you to remain focused on the sound of my voice as you continue to accept all of these suggestions at a deep unconscious level, or something like that. So it's just bringing them back a little bit lighter up until you're getting a response. And then as soon as you get a response, give them a suggestion to stay focused, to stay with you, and then continue with the session. So just to recap all of that, firstly, the pre-talk. Make sure the client understands their role in the process. Secondly, if you're concerned that they're going too deep, or that they're dozing off, or that they've dozed off before, just a light induction, no deeper, and then tap into the power of their imagination. Thirdly, use their name, keep the hypnotherapy session conversational, and using their name will keep them with you, or be bringing their attention back to you. And then, of course, never be afraid to ask for feedback, so that you know what they're doing and what you need to do next. And then just bringing them up a little bit lighter, until they're back with you, and then giving them a suggestion to remain focused on the sound of your voice, and then just to keep checking in for the rest of the session that they're still with you. So I hope that helped, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.